212 Heavy, hold position, caution the Airbus A20 in on the runway. Delta Niner 77 Heavy, continue taxi. Hold position, American Tree 212 Heavy. Roger, Delta Niner 77 Heavy. American Tree 212 Heavy, hold position, caution the Airbus A20 in on final. Hold position, American Tree 212 Heavy. Line up and wait, Delta 2072 Heavy.
Atlanta Tower, Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Kilo at runway 27 right, ready for departure to the south.
Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Kilo, hold short runway 27 right. Traffic is Airbus at 20N on short final. Delta 2731 Heavy, contacted land and departure on 133.475. Good day. Delta 2731 Heavy. Goodbye. Delta 2072 Heavy, altimeter 200.92, wind calm. Cleared for takeoff, runway 27 right. Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Kilo, line up and wait.
Line up and wait, Beechcraft Golf Sierra Kilo.
Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Kilo, wind calm, stop departure approved.
My math skyrocketed.
Cleared for takeoff, runway 27 right. Beechcraft Golf Sierra Kilo, did you copy?
Cleared for takeoff, runway 27 right, Beechcraft Golf Sierra Kilo.
Beechcraft Golf Sierra Kilo, continue for south departure.
Atlanta Tower Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Kilo frequency change.
Fiverr allows us to take our dreams and make it a reality.
We're able to hire freelance illustrators, editors,
for the action. The zombies are breaking through.
Now, it has been an action-packed 7 months with the Trump administration, but for everything that you see and hear on the news, there is so much more happening behind the scenes. At the FBI, the director, Kash Patel, is working around the clock with Dan Bongino and others and other agents. Not only are they dealing with the crime crisis left behind by Joe Biden and unvetted illegals, 12 to 20 million of them, but also peeling back the layers of what has been what we have reported as a deeply politicized, weaponized federal bureaucracy. For example, Kash Patel, the FBI director, recently uncovered thousands and thousands of Russia hoax documents inside these burn bags in a secret room at the FBI. The director also discovered official allegations from a Democratic staffer who accused Adam Schiff of orchestrating leaks of classified intelligence in order to hurt President Trump. Those allegations had been swept under the rug at the FBI until now, and that's not all. According to a bombshell report from JustTheNews.com founder, editor-in-chief John Solomon, James Comey also accused of routinely leaking classified information to the New York Times through a friend, a professor at Columbia University. Just the tip of the iceberg. Anyway, here at the very latest, FBI Director Kash Patel. Kash, great to have you. Let's start with the burn room. Now, your knowledge of this issue runs wide and it runs deep because you were working with Devin Nunes at the time. I believe you were his chief of staff. You know a lot about this topic. Were you as surprised as I was that all of that information in that burn room existed?
Sean, I was blown away, but sadly, it's come to be expected in this town when corrupt bureaucrats weaponize and destroy law enforcement like predecessors of mine did at the FBI. And thankfully, Donald Trump's mandate and election victory was for transparency and accountability. Sean, just think about this for a second. Not only did we expose the Russiagate hoax with the greats like Devin and Trey and Johnny Ratcliffe when we were back there on the House Intel Committee excavating and exposing the FISA abuses, the corruption of political parties, and the lies to a federal court just to illegally surveil a presidential candidate. I come in then years later, nearly a decade as a director of the FBI, thinking we uncovered most of it. But sadly, we found a room locked away in the Hoover building that contained burn bags. And just for your audience, Sean, a burn bag is a government bag that is specifically created to destroy classified evidence and shred and burn it, hence the name burn bag. We didn't find one, we found 7. That wasn't the only thing we found in there. We found hard drives from our predecessors and prior FBI leadership, and folks like Page, Strzok, Comey, McCabe, Comey, the list goes on from Russiagate. The names were strewn all over these materials. Now, as our great Attorney General just told you, we can't deny or confirm what we're looking at, but what we can discuss is what we've publicly disclosed. And these documents have been publicly disclosed because the greatest way to educate and bring along the American public for transparency, initiative, and accountability under President Trump is to give them the documents. And step 1 is by cleaning house inside the walls of Hoover.
Okay, one of the important things you got to remember is that's the FBI's job. You gather the evidence, and then it is examined, in this case, by the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. And, you know, but there's been a lot of talk and a lot written about the investigation into a grand conspiracy. To the extent possible, what can you tell us about that? In other words, that this is long-standing. If it is, in fact, a grand conspiracy, that statute of limitations would be eliminated. Is that what the investigation is about?
Well, Sean, what we're doing is building a case for the American public under the Truth and Transparency and Accountability Initiative. And what I mean by that is AG Bondi brilliantly highlighted our partners, Director Ratcliffe at the CIA and Director Gabbard over at the DNI. We are working with them because the documents that would facilitate an investigation of this magnitude don't just rest at the FBI and DOJ. They're throughout the intelligence community. And we, the Russiagate guys like Johnny Ratcliffe and myself who investigated this and exposed this, are trying to expose documentation that we've known existed for years. At the same time, we're finding new material. So the best approach is to release this information with them and also go to our colleagues in Congress who have an oversight function on the judiciary committees and oversight committees and demand from us information and documentation that we can publicize. Things like the Durham Annex, which we've known have existed this entire time, but were classified for political reasons. We are educating the American public as we build through this transparency initiative. And where the investigation goes, I can assure you of this. We will max accountability for the American public. We delivered before when we ran the Russiagate investigation. I now happen to be President Trump's choice for FBI director, and I'm honored to lead that charge with our great partners in Johnny Ratcliffe and our great Attorney General and the prosecutors they have over there who are just as committed to justice as everyone should be, blindly so. We are going to de-weaponize the FBI and get its credibility back to the American people by delivering the accountability they need, by showing them what we're doing every step of the way. That has never been done before.
Restoring the FBI to its former greatness. That would be the words I would use to describe what needs to be done and I hope can be done. If we look at the declassified materials, for example, that Tulsi Gabbard released, you know, we already had an intelligence assessment on the question of whether or not Donald Trump colluded with Vladimir Putin. Here I am in Alaska. They will have a summit tomorrow. And in fact, the conclusion of senior career intelligence officials was it did not happen. There's no evidence at all that it happened. Then the report suggests that Barack Obama himself, along with his top intel officials, that would probably be people like Brennan and Clapper and maybe some others, decided to do a new intelligence assessment because they didn't like the old one. And they got a narrative that moved forward. But yet also they added something, and I believe it was John Brennan that said they did not do this, but then they used the Hillary Clinton bought and paid for Russian disinformation dossier. That was also used by James Comey for the FISA applications. He signed 3 of the 4. He was warned in August of 2016 not to use it. And then we knew definitively by December of 2016 that, in fact, that dossier had been debunked and that Christopher Steele wasn't credible. So the question is a timeline.
These 100% grass-fed beef sticks from Paleo Valley are 30 sticks for just $36 right now. But before you go and buy them, here are 5 reasons I replaced processed snacks with these. Number 1, the ingredients. There's 100% grass-fed beef from American Family Farms and organic spices, which makes these.
When you add that to the 2020 election and the fact that by March of 2020, they knew Hunter's laptop, they had verified its authenticity and that it was real, and then they're pre-bunking it by meeting weekly with big tech companies, and then when it gets dropped, which they knew would happen because of Rudy Giuliani's attorney, they knew Bob Costello had a copy. Are they putting cinder blocks on the scales of elections? Was weaponization from 2020 to 2024 designed to bloody up Trump? In other words, do we have 3 presidential elections, potentially, that cinder blocks were put on the scales of the election so the results would come out the way one team wanted it to come out, the team in power?
Here's the beauty of it, Sean. You don't have to trust me or trust you. That's all, everything you recited, the summary you just gave, is years of excavating documents that these deep state actors held and buried and documented their own corruption because they were arrogant enough to think no one would ever find it, that Donald Trump would never become president and appoint a cabinet that would go in and investigate this matter thoroughly. And when you start connecting the dots, here's what I learned, Sean, when I ran the Russiagate investigation. As bad as the crime is, the corruption cover-up from senior government officials who are sworn to uphold their duties and accountability for the American public, they are the ones that violated that trust the most internally and need to be held accountable. So the people you've listed and the names you're calling out aren't surprises. Their names are on those documents. Those documents are public. The FISA is public. The 302s are public. The Strzok page texts are public. Documents are being released weekly by Johnny Ratcliffe and Tulsi, making it public. The burn bag information is coming out. The Durham Annex is coming out. The classified appendix is coming out. The American people are going to see and hear the names themselves, and they can touch and feel it. As far as what my investigators are going to do, these guys are the best in the business, and we've assembled a team of accountability, and we're going to deliver for the American people like never before, because that's what the American people elected Donald Trump to do.
Kash Patel, this is transparency the American people deserve. I know it takes a lot of time. Look, they spent 2 years to bring charges against President Trump, and you've only been there, but what, 6 months? We appreciate you taking time to share this information with us and update us. And we wish you luck in finding the truth. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page.
This brilliant device keeps your home cool in summer, even during heat waves and power outages. It's smaller than a lunchbox.
Gavin Newsom is running to become Trump's top antagonist. The California governor, or more accurately, his staff, has been mimicking the president's trademark all-caps truth social rants with posts like this. Donald Taco Trump, as many call him, missed the deadline, 3 exclamation points. California will now draw new, more beautiful maps. They will be historic as they will end the Trump presidency. Dems take back the House. Earlier, Newsom held a press conference to unveil California's new redistricting push.
Today is Liberation Day in the state of California, and as Senator Schiff said, Donald Trump, you have poked the bear, and we will punch back. We cannot unilaterally disarm. They want to rig these elections, and they want the power that gerrymandering provides, because they know what Donald Trump knows. He's going to lose the midterms.
Somebody else was at the Newsom news conference. Border Patrol agents were outside arresting illegal immigrants, and it sure set off the governor.
Pretty sick and pathetic. And it just said everything you need to know, the setting that we're under. That they chose the time, manner, and place to send their district director outside right when we're about to have this press conference. Said everything you know about Donald Trump's America. And that was top down, you know that for a fact. They'll deny it, I'm sure. Maybe they won't deny it. Said everything you know about the authoritarian tendencies of the President of the United States.
What do you think of that, Charlie?
The guy is such a faker. He's such a fraud. It's so absurd. Who has time to come sit down and make up all of these tweets? And if you read them, he put a lot of effort into it. And he really did try to sort of like get the voice of Trump. And I just, you know, when you look at the real problems that California faces with whether it's the same ones that, you know, that we face nationally with illegal immigration, but also the very specific ones, you have entire neighborhoods that were burned to the ground a year ago that are desperate to rebuild, and his government is preventing people from rebuilding those houses. You would think that he might focus on that instead of doing these ridiculous effort to try to channel Trump. One of his tweets at 9:42 this morning said, Donald Trump and Greg Abbott are going to have a very bad day today, which sounds a lot like Baghdad Bob or like the mullahs in Iran when they're like talking junk on Twitter as Donald Trump is like bombing their nuclear facilities. He's ridiculous. He's completely unserious. He reminds me a lot of Michael Avenatti before Michael Avenatti went off to prison, when everybody was like, oh, this guy's going to be the next president. This guy's not going to be president. This guy is a ridiculous buffoon, and he's not going anywhere. It does remind you, though, how much of a complete original Donald Trump is. You know, all these people want to like mimic him. He's not mimicking anyone. He is the original.
Yeah, I think that I hate it when people copy everything else. Like when my sister did it to me, that would drive me insane.
Wow.
Yeah, Angie, hardest hit. But several of these people are trying that, or they're trying to be tough, and it's not authentic. It's like, why not just try to be yourself? It's the worst way that you can try to find some sort of cohesion with people outside of your bubble is to just be yourself, not to try to be somebody else. In this case, Trump.
But themselves have been rejected again and again now by voters. Voters don't want defunding the police, defunding the criminals, higher taxes, more regulation. So this is California. Everything beautiful about California is God-made. Every disaster that continues to be man-made. And he's the man right now at the moment. I'm not even sure anybody tuning in, Dana, let alone governor of California halfway into his press conference even knows what he's talking about. They presume that we all know what brought us to that moment. The platform says rigging, election rigging response act. Adam Schiff's behind him of all people. Next, they're going to invite Kamala up to the podium. I mean, Adam Schiff, of all people, who's got a true problem on his hands, having lied on a mortgage application. He's a senator from California, yet somehow he lives in Maryland. And here's a guy who lied to all of us day after day. There's evidence of Russian collusion in plain sight. This is relevant now because these investigations will continue. I don't think this is a case of flattery is the greatest, imitation is the greatest form of flattery. I think it's a messageless, rudderless, leaderless party. And by the way, just north of him up in Alaska, starting tomorrow, President Trump is going to literally own the turf again. He's trying to bring about yet another peace deal. We have Armenia and Azerbaijan, we have Cambodia and Thailand, we have what he's doing in the Middle East, we have direct foreign investment, all these trade deals. He goes to the Gulf states and comes out of there with investments in this country. And now he's going to do it again with Putin. And meanwhile, you've got Shifty Schiff and Newsom trying to troll him online. By the way, Donald Trump is one of one. Even Republicans who try to act like him often come
They fail, and it's embarrassing.
They fail, and it's
But Jessica, also today there's a poll that says 61% of California Democrats oppose the plan to throw out the independent redistricting commission. Do you think that holds, or do you think you sway them by this one?
So the problem with that poll is it didn't actually ask the question that applies to what Gavin Newsom is offering, which is to not get rid of the independent commission on a long-term basis, but to suspend it. He's offering 3 different maps, 3 different versions of what's possible. It'll be on a ballot measure, so it will be democratically voted on November 5th. And that poll question basically said, do you want to just get rid of the independent commission? He's saying to suspend it until 2030. He knows how important independent redistricting is. It was Schwarzenegger's baby. Spoken to the governor about that, former governor, and former governor. So that poll is not applicable to what's actually going on here. I know it did get a lot of pickup. Kellyanne says all these people have been rejected. Gavin Newsom hasn't been rejected. He's been elected and reelected and recalled and then elected again. And he won that quite handedly. So I don't know where you're getting that. You can make fun of Adam Schiff, Alex Padilla, whoever you want, but California needs to do something because of what Donald Trump has asked Texas to do. And there is no reason that Democrats should show up with a knife to a gunfight. And that's what he's arguing. And it's not just that, so Texas will pick up 5 seats. What Gavin Newsom could potentially do if the voters decide, again, this is about democracy, that they want to go full tilt, they could get 9 seats. So they could get 5 Republicans out, and they could also shore up 4 vulnerable Democrats in swing seats and make sure we get those as well.
It's
and when
easy
there
to get
are
elected, I'll clarify, it's easy, simple to get elected
Is
and
it?
reelected and reelected as a Democrat, as a socialist, as a
That's not,
as a
Gavin Newsom is a socialist.
as a coddle criminals. Has he condemned Mondami? Has he condemned what's going on here?
Kellyanne, stop just
No,
throwing whatever on the wall about this. You're just using buzzwords.
I don't need to use buzzwords. Here's
Really,
the substance
Mamdani
of
has
this
nothing
guy.
to do with Gavin Newsom.
Oh, New York City has nothing to do with the governor of California. They're the same party, as is your party. But since you invoked my name, we're going to do Fox News debate rules, and I get 30 seconds. Here's what I meant.
I never
It is
get that
simple.
rule.
It is so simple to be elected, reelected, reelected. As a Democrat in California, it's impossible to govern as these kinds of Democrats in California is all I mean. His policies are being rejected. People do want tough on crime. They don't want fewer cops on the beat. They don't want fewer Border Patrol people helping them. They don't want schools that are failing their kids year in and year out, and Democrats insisting everything's okay. He wants to be president in 2028. He ought to find a new country to try to do that.
Let's ask the Californian what you think, Greg Gutfeld.
I'm struck about how finally you see passion among Democrats, but it's not about a policy. It's about a power-based initiative. It's about how can we do this so we stay in power. It's not about homelessness, drug addiction, fires, or trans, or crime, or the border. It's about redistricting. And then their fire is up. Gavin is so creepy, he makes American Psycho look like Pippi Longstocking. Again with Taco. They don't get it. You know, if you want a meme or anything to be memorable, it has to be truth taken from absurdity. But if you are the absurdity, it's not possible. They should have learned that from Dark Brandon, where they tried to make dementia cool. Oh yeah, sure, Joe is frail, confused, and incoherent, but he can almost put on his sunglasses by himself. Gavin can't be Trump because behind Trump's charisma is specific common sense policies. He understands people. Build a wall, deport criminals, eradicate vagrancy, get trans out of sports. What is Gavin for? Nobody knows. He cannot point to one policy. It's not about crime. It's not about the wildfires. It's nothing. I don't know what he stands for. And it leads me to this other thing about trying to figure out why Democrats are so lazy. And they are literally lazy. They think that if they just focus on Trump, then they don't have to assess these other issues. There's like 6 or 7 issues. He says people are scared. He says that Trump's going to run for a 3rd term. These are very easy things to say. They're hypothetical. They're not true, but it's easy. So if Democrats know the problem, why don't they solve it? Are they allergic to work? How are you allergic to work? It makes me think that when they look at a problem, they see the effort and the inconvenience that is put on them to reach that point, where Republicans actually see the outcome of the work, and that makes the inconvenience and the effort worth it. So we're going to be unpopular if we crack down on crime. So people will call us transphobic if we want men out of women's sports. So people are going to call us xenophobic because we want a wall. But that's what we go through to get to the solution. The Democrats, however, are just focused on the effort and the inconvenience of losing status if they were to grow some balls.
If they wanted to do the work, they wouldn't steal 5 seats. And that's what Donald Trump asked them to do.
Well, that's a political question. I'm talking about people's concerns. And right now, you're in big trouble.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are. If I didn't have to go to
Uh-huh.
the bathroom right now, we would have a serious conversation.
I say let go, Greg.
All right, up next, President Trump is offering his blunt take on the leaders of the Democratic Party. We'll be right back.
They are led by insane people.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.
Want to lose 15 to 20% of your weight in a
There's a lot of tentacles to this story here. Let's tease them out with our friend there, Burn Law Enforcement, Josh Sherrard. He joins me. Josh, good to see you. I know you've been following this story quite heavily here. Let's start, though, with the National Guard. We actually have a live picture there. This is outside Union Station, right in the heart of D.C. What do you see in this shot right here, Josh?
Yeah, so we've got, traditionally what's called an MRAP, which is an armored vehicle, parked there in front of the building. And, this is really kind of indicative of what the National Guard has really been employed to do. When we first heard that they were going to be out there, we really weren't sure what their role was going to be. The D.C. National Guard is in a very unique spot as opposed to some of the other military forces. So Posse Comitatus doesn't allow federal military to be used in law enforcement functions. So traditionally, your Army, Navy, Marine Corps, all that, they cannot be used as law enforcement. Now, normally National Guard would take that role for the states because they work for the governor. But D.C. is the only district where the National Guard is controlled by a federal entity already. So now you have a federal hand that's allowing these soldiers to do law enforcement work. So they're fully vested and fully able to perform law enforcement functions. But what we've seen over the past 3 days is a little bit of dialing back from that. Really, they are just performing security functions, static post functions in federal property, just like we saw in Los Angeles. So really not quite the flex we thought we were going to see, which I think, in all honesty, at this point in time is needed. Now, that role could change very quickly if needed, but having them there to protect those federal properties allows those normal gun toters, those guys with guns and badges, guys and girls with guns and badges, to go out there and really do the heavy lifting on the law enforcement work.
I think it's important to make the distinction. National Guard troops, Josh, can they arrest and detain anyone or no?
So technically, yes. So because these National Guard troops, once again, don't fall under Posse Comitatus, they have law enforcement function. They can do traffic checkpoints. They can do crowd control. They can do riot response. And they do have the power to detain and arrest on a temporary basis. So what does that look like practically? They could if they, on view, what we call on view, if they see somebody violating a law, they can go put hands on them, detain them, keep them there while, you know, an actual badged law enforcement officer, be it federal or state or city, gets over there to continue that arrest. But they do have that power. Now, once again, I don't think that they're exercising it or their mission is to exercise it at this particular point, but always that could change.
Okay, so Josh, we're looking at Union Station. This is in the heart of the nation's capital. We've seen them near the National Mall, near the monuments. Are they deployed to where they need to be, to high crime neighborhoods and parts of the district? Are they being used as effectively as they can?
I think what we're seeing, in all honesty, and mind you, this is speculation, but having done the job for over 2 decades now, if it was me, I would try to hold them in reserve as long as I can. Look, we know that their presence is very, is just throwing fuel on a fire to a lot of DC residents and a lot of people around the country. So having them out in full force at the onset of this, I don't think is the right move. Now, what are they doing? They're doing a very good job protecting those federal properties, allowing those normal police officers that would be doing that job to go out and really kind of, get to that law enforcement function. But what are they also doing? They are very close and at hand, if needed, very quickly, if we do need them to start permeating those high crime areas, those neighborhoods, they're right there ready to do that. So I think this is kind of a very cautious way of, once again, freeing up resources to do other things, to do more law enforcement motivated tasks, but also keeping a good resource at hand.
So Josh, you mentioned some of the antagonism that is coming their way. Take a look at this. This is going viral, this video put out by FBI Director Kash Patel. This presumably DC resident throwing a Subway sandwich at one of these officers, then taking chase. He was later apprehended. Come to find out, this is now former trial attorney at the Department of Justice. What's he facing, you think? Throwing a sandwich at one of these law enforcement officers and then running away? What penalty does that bring? Do you know?
Well, I don't know if there's a specific statute for assault with a deadly weapon, but right now they are charging him federally with assault on a peace officer. So federally, this carries a charge of up to 8 years in prison because it is a felony. But as much as we make light and a joke out of this, this is a very, very indicative crime of what they're there to do, of what the Trump administration is asking law enforcement to do. Mind you, is this minor? Possibly. Could this incite something more major? Absolutely. Is arresting him a message? You betcha. It allows everybody to know. It's telling everybody, hey, these are the kinds of things we're not going to let slide anymore. This is the kind of stuff that we have to do to secure this district and make it safer. Whether it's a crime like this, or whether it's something more major, more assaultive, that's directed towards the public. But people have to understand that at this point, at least for the next 30 days, that there's going to be a very, very different environment when it comes to how crimes are arrested and prosecuted in the district. I mean, you heard Judge Janine. She is holding no quarter for anyone that's going to commit crimes, be they with a deli sandwich, a weapon, or anything else in the district, especially for the next 30 days. So let this be a message to everyone there.
But you mentioned adding fuel on the fire, the criticism that is coming to just the very presence of these enhanced law enforcement officers there. Doesn't this take away from that if they have to deal with something like that we're watching right now, kind of on repeat, on loop? They're focused on him. They're not focused on carjackings, armed robberies, et cetera, et cetera.
It absolutely does. Obviously we want those resources to be diverted where they're most useful, and this is something that's not useful, but it is to a certain extent. Are they taking a career criminal off the street? No. This guy's he's been a trial attorney for the DOJ, probably stayed out of trouble most of his life. But like I said, what it's doing is it's sending a message. Sending a message to those would-be criminals to say, ooh, man, we may want to think twice, at least over the next 30 days, or at least until we see, some changes here. We may want to think twice about doing anything. I mean, heck, if they're throwing a guy in jail for a felony that works for the federal government, in jail for a felony that could face up to 8 years in prison, imagine what is going to happen to those they catch that are doing something worse. So, is this a good use of police resources? I'd much rather see them.
Something I love almost as much as I love America is a great deal. Also, novelty socks. If you don't
put away a career criminal. However, the message is very clear.
Okay, I have to ask you about this because there have been reports I was seeing on social media as well. Checkpoints set up, stopping drivers in parts of the capital here. Why is that necessary?
Well, for a couple reasons. One, we want to see the presence. That's the whole point. They want to see the presence. But two, what we have to understand is we really don't know the reason for these checkpoints. We understand, we make speculations that it might be to intimidate people, which is obviously, coming from a law enforcement officer, there's no reason to do that. But we don't know what they know. And sometimes it's very difficult for the public to understand that they don't have the full picture on purpose. Look, law enforcement can't give you the full picture. They can't give you the whole strategy behind their enforcement, because if we did, then we'd never catch anybody. There's so many times as a police officer, PIO, when I was a public information officer, that I'd talk about operations that could only reveal so much because I couldn't give the operation away because I didn't want to tip off bad guys. We don't know if maybe HSI's out there, CBP's out there, because they have information that there is a drug kingpin or a human trafficker that they've been following that may be traversing those routes. We just don't know that information. But otherwise, they are looking. They want people to know that they're out there. They're looking for those that are going to break the law, and they're not going to give really any kind of mercy on those that are going to blatantly disrespect the law and think that they can get away with it anymore. It's the little things that you have to look for that give you the bigger picture.
Yeah, to the Trump administration's credit here, I do think FBI Director KATL, U.S. Attorney Pirro, they have been somewhat transparent listing the number of people they have arrested since this all began 48 hours ago. Lastly, Josh, I just want to get your thoughts here. Post by DHS on X with that photo there of these kind of new vehicles by ICE. They say, we will have our country back. Learning today that D.C. police chief stepping up cooperation between her officers and federal immigration officials as President Trump's law enforcement takeover of the nation's capital took root today. National Guard troops watching over some of the world's most renowned landmarks, and Humvees took up position in front of the busy main train station. The police chief's order establishing that Metropolitan Police Department officers, Josh, may now share information with immigration agencies regarding people not in custody, such as someone involved in a traffic stop or checkpoint. MPD officers may also provide, quote, transportation for federal immigration employees and detained subject, the order states here. So, Josh, we're seeing kind of an easing of the sanctuary status of D.C., aren't we?
Yeah, and this is really just in line with a lot of Trump's policies and this administration's policies with other cities around the country that have wanted to adopt, those sanctuary policies. He's made it very clear that sanctuary cities are going to be deprived of whatever it can be, whether it's funding, whether it's resources, manpower, until they comply with more cooperative agreements with DHS and CBP and ICE. And I think this is one of a laundry list of things that are going to get done here in DC over the next 30 days where, hey, they are going to increase that cooperation. These sanctuary cities that are just hamstringing officers' ability and options to have when they encounter illegal aliens is allowing these illegal aliens to be arrested, to get back out, to commit further crime and be a further drain on that community and make that community less safe. This is a way to make sure that they have options to deal with possibly violent offenders or violent criminals down the road and get them detained and get them deported.
Josh, lastly, you can make the argument that the entire crux of immigration enforcement is information sharing between jurisdictions, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is. As a cop, we're here in Texas, obviously huge, massive issues with immigration. And there are a lot of times that we would arrest somebody or detain somebody and it was clear that they'd committed multiple crimes. Having that option to cooperate and say, hey, ICE, CBP, what can we do to cooperate? This guy, this girl, whoever it is, has been here 3 times, been deported 3 times. How do we get them out? How do we make this community safer? Being able to share that information and that cooperation gave us options to solve a problem. And that's what they're doing here. They're trying to solve a problem. And the only thing that to solve problems is more options to do it, not hamstringing those officers. And the last thing we need to do is dissuade or keep that information sharing from happening between agencies, especially in a place like DC, where there's literally hundreds of agencies that work together in such a small geographic footprint.
All right, Josh Gerard, as always, so informative. We're at the top of the hour. We got to go. Thanks so much for your time. I know we went long.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew.
Okay, here we are, 6 o'clock on the West Coast, 9 o'clock there in the nation.
At Grainger, we're for the ones who pay attention to every little detail, the ones who fuss, tinker, and sweat the small stuff. Because you know the tiniest thing can make the biggest difference when it comes to keeping business moving. We get it. We're the same way, offering access to product experts to help you quickly and easily.
What's up, everyone? All right, so in today's episode, I'm going to break down all of my trades from the morning. I'm sitting here in the green, but I'm feeling a little nervous to keep trading, and it's because of a couple of really nasty red candles that we've seen. So when I have a chart or a stock that I'm trading, and it's behaving normally, we've got a nice kind of ramp up and then a little pullback and then another leg higher, that I can get my head around. But on the stock that I'm going to talk about here, we had these sort of nice move up and then a giant red candle, where all of a sudden it drops like $1 a share, and yes, it grinds back up, but it makes me nervous to get in it because I'm worried at any moment you could get another big red candle. What I've learned is that once stocks have done that even once, you've got a very high likelihood of it happening several more times throughout the day. So now we've seen it twice, and it's probably gonna happen 3, 4, maybe 5 times or more. It's gonna shake out traders. So now I feel like I'm on the sidelines watching this action and missing it, but I'm thinking about risk first, because as you know, I'm not in a place where I can be super aggressive on the month yet. I'm still working on building my cushion. Okay, so yesterday was a good day. I was up over right around $20,000. Today, sitting up $16,000, so it's another decent day. And I made $5,872 on XPON, which is the stock that I'm looking at right now. This stock is currently up over 300% on the day, began its move after hours. So this is very similar to some of the other stocks that have moved this week, including ATNF, which was Monday into Tuesday, ATNF, this squeeze. And then yesterday we had BSLK, which was Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, right? So then, and in the afternoon, this really big squeeze. So I have to say that there's a very good chance that traders are going to be looking for a midday squeeze like what we had yesterday on BSLK and like what we had on Tuesday on ATNF. Is it going to be XPON? I don't know. It's already got 240 million shares of volume. It's already up 300%. Now, BSLK went up over 500%. So I'm not saying it doesn't have more room to go, but here's where I'm really nervous. So first of all, I didn't trade it pre-market in this area because it was sort of below the pre-market highs. And then right here, it squeezes up, it dips down, it pops higher, and I don't like that because of that sort of those two little topping tail candles. It's sort of a tweezer top, not perfect, but that's a reversal indicator. It sells off, then it rallies back up, dips down, and I ended up getting in right here. Well, that didn't work so well. I only made $500 on my first trade. It sells off, pulls back, comes back up here, dips down, comes back up here, and I get back in there for the break over 4, and it breaks, but it doesn't end up holding. It rejects. So I made a couple $1,000 on that trade, and then to the open, it curls up, looks like it's gonna go, hits that ascending resistance line again, and it drops $1 a share. Whoa. It rallies back up, then it breaks out, and then look again. This big red candle right there all the way back down. Then it slowly grinds back up. So I'm worried about another, big red candle. And that's the risk. So that means that I can't take big size on this because I could lose up to $1 a share. If I did 30, 40,000 shares, the loss would be way too big. And if I do small size, given that it's a thickly traded stock with, it just feels like it's not really worth it, which is really tricky. So XPON, it's up 300%. It may go higher, but unfortunately these red candles are giving me pause, and for good reason. So now, when I first sat down, SNOA was also one of the leading gainers, but this one popped up after hours and then again pre-market, gave a really nice setup right here, going right into 7 a.m. So that was my first trade of the day right there, and that gave me $6,800 within the first 5 minutes of sitting down. So I felt really good about that. Got in, got green, locked it up, and was looking for the next trade. And the next trade was actually XOS, which was also one of our leading gainers this morning. Again, after hours move, popped up pre-market, and then big red candle. Comes up again, big red candle. Comes up again, big red candle. So this one was hard to trust. And I broke the ice on it cautiously, but it was a risky move. And this was also kind of my reminder of be very careful because you could make a big mistake on this. RSLS, another one that's grinding higher. I've traded it before. You know, I'm not very confident. It does have some green candles on the daily, as you can see, but I don't know. I guess I feel maybe like there's a bit of dispersed attention today. You've got high volume on about 5-10 different stocks. You've got a couple big leading gainers. TRIB was another one that squeezed up this morning from $1 to $2.40, but then came back down. The float there's a little higher. So I just found myself not feeling totally in the zone today, and I wanted to acknowledge that and not force it. Now, I actually hit a high of just under $20,000, $19,900. I was so close to crossing over 20, and then I gave back on XPON, you know, about $3,500. So the fact that I lost on my last trade, that I was right at the daily goal and then gave some back, you know, all of that, plus some of this price action is leading me to say, you know what, be grateful for what you've got. $16,000 is a great day. Yes, it's been a slower week. Yes, it's been a slower month. But look, not every month is going to be $1 million month. Not every week is going to be a big $200,000-$300,000 week. And if I can just stay in the green, then that positions me where when I get back in the zone and I start feeling a little bit more confident, my account's at all-time highs. I've got the buying power. I'm not in a drawdown. I've got the confidence, and I'm good to go. The worst thing I can do is be so hard on myself that I just push myself, and then end up catching a big loss, making a mistake, and getting super frustrated. So I'm trying to just, you know, take it as it comes. This is not the big, you know, momentum that I was hoping for here today or this week. And even if we do get something later in the day that really pulls away, I just don't know that I would have the comfort to trade it because of kind of giving back a little profit off the top and the way things have been choppy. So, you know, so at this point, I think I'm just going to try to go slow, be patient, and, you know, then I'll be back at it, obviously, first thing tomorrow morning. So that's the game plan. That's where I sit right now. The high here, 550. I noticed a 150,000 share seller at one point up here. It was like a 5 or something like that. So it obviously broke through that, but I just worry about some of these big sellers. So anyways, that's it for me. That's the recap. A reminder, as always, trading is risky. My results aren't typical, so manage your risk, take it slow, and always make sure to practice in a simulator before putting real money on the line. And I'll see you guys back at it first thing tomorrow morning.
You don't need to stress out about car insurance. You just go to Insurify.
They can help you save money and headaches. No spam, no call.
They're losing control and now they're starting to panic. I warned us what happened as China Bull's asking firms run by central government to buy homes. And we talked about this yesterday, how the fire sales were going to lead to price discovery. Now the big issue, of course, is that the Chinese banks are holding a lot of debt against their property developers. If those assets are turned out to be a lot less in value, it means the Chinese banks need to raise cash. But the problem is they'll go insolvent. Consumers will then start to withdraw money. Next thing you know, the whole financial system comes tumbling down. Of course, Beijing can't let this happen because they know once that goes, you've got an all-out financial crisis and it's going to spread all over the world. Regulators are planning to ask some of the biggest state-owned enterprises and bad debt managers to help clear the housing glut. The firms will be allowed to tap 300 billion yuan of funding that the central bank earmarked for the program last year that largely did not get used. But now all of a sudden, there's a sense of urgency because Beijing's figured out that more of these companies are going to start missing their debt payments. They're going to get taken to court, and then there's going to be fire sales, and it's going to ripple all through the financial system. They can't let this happen. The problem is they've got way too many unsold homes, too much inventory, not enough demand. The renewed effort, which is still under discussion, could help speed up the clearance of China's 408 million square meters of excess inventory, larger than the size of Detroit. So this is a massive problem. You can see housing has really driven the domestic Chinese economy. Now, with the global economy slowing down, their export engine is going with it, and without the housing market running, they're facing an all-out recession. But again, the issue is you've got a lot of bad debt sitting on the bank balance sheets. The moment it gets written down, it's game over for their financial system. And officials are also considering scrapping a price cap for the program in a bid to accelerate the process and improve the economics of the plan for both developers and state buyers. And it wasn't long ago that Xi Jinping came out and said, look, I want to get rid of all the speculation in the housing market. Well, what a bad move that was, and now look what they're doing. They're going to think about removing the cap, and that's a very good reason why. Because if they force the local governments to overbid for these properties, they know they have to do that because they need to put cash into the pockets of these developers so they can make their loan payments, so they can keep investors and banks solvent. You can see this is a massive government bailout, all to keep China's economy from crumbling down. The problem is, I don't think it's going to work. When China's property sector started falling into distress more than 4 years ago, Beijing sought help from bad debt managers. Regulators told firms to participate in restructuring of weak developers, or what we call extend and pretend. Keep them afloat as long as possible and hope your economy turns around. Acquire stalled property projects and even buy soured loans. Again, get those bad loans off the bank balance sheet because we need the banks to continue to lend. We need everyone to have confidence in the housing market so they'll keep spending, because without it, what happens is China's economy just directly is going to implode. But something that shouldn't implode with China's economy, well, that's your trading account. Check out this amazing swing trade that our MetaStrategy picked up back on the 6th. We told people to buy PHO on the open on the 14th. That's today. We were stopped out for a nice 2.08% gain. And I'll tell you more about how our MetaStrategy is changed way. But there's a reason it hasn't been. The 4 largest bad debt managers themselves were grappling with souring loans after overextending during China's real estate boom. And that's the problem. When you see, of course, the banking system start to fall apart, when you see people enter delinquency and then default, people do not want to lend. And that's what these bad debt managers, that's their job, is they manage bad debt. And they're saying, look, we've got too much of it. We don't want even more. And the problem is, as the global economy slows, as China's economy slows, you're going to see more loans enter delinquency and then go into default, and there you have the problem is the bad debt managers don't want it. And then you see the real issue here is Beijing's going to have to force them by coming in and providing stimulus, liquidity, and a bailout to their property sector, and they're doing that all through the government agencies selling them. You go up and buy up these bad homes, put some money into these property developers' pockets, and that will turn around a lot of this bad debt and then allow these bad loan managers to take on even more. But again, the problem is, I don't think it's enough to save China's economy. And here you can see the effects of what's going on with these bad loan managers. Let's turn to some U.S. data here. We've got the commercial industrial lending data in blue against the delinquency rate on all loans at commercial banks in red. And you can see very clearly, and this is the same issue those bad debt managers are facing, is look, the delinquency rate is rising, and that means, of course, we're not extending loans to new customers, and that tends to foreshadow a recession each and every time. Now, here in the U.S., what do you see? The commercial industrial lending is on the rise, but we also know that the delinquency rate is going to head a whole lot higher. We've heard a lot of evidence, at least from the consumer side, that wealthier Americans are falling behind on their credit cards and their car loans. So we can expect the delinquency rate to go up here. When that happens, the lending rate is going to go down. But again, think about this from the perspective of these bad debt managers. If you're already seeing delinquencies rise, the last thing you want is more bad debt, because it means they're the next ones that are going out of business. And Chinese developer Road King unexpectedly suspends debt payments. Well, aside from the fact that I don't understand why they're called Road King and they're a property developer, doesn't make any sense to me. But the issue here is, again, another company running out of money. And that's exactly what you see when the global economy slows down. There isn't enough money being created by the banking system to pay on all the debts. And that's the key thing about that chart I just showed you, is as delinquencies go up, banks lend less. And when that happens and you see lending enter contraction, which just happened in China, well, what it means is money is being destroyed. And again, what you find out, not enough money to pay on all the debts. And next thing you know, the whole thing spirals right out of control. Chinese developer Road King Infrastructure is suspending all offshore debt payments, a reversal from a couple months ago when it said it expected to have enough cash to pay interest on borrowings this year. The company said it should explore a holistic solution to the situation, meaning they're looking for debt restructuring. What they're really hoping for now is that Beijing will step in and bail out the financial system, bail out the property developers by buying up all of these unsold homes. So you can see there's going to be a lot of pressure. Beijing's going to step in and say, look, the central bank has this tool, they have this money, we're going to release the caps, go out and buy. And they're going to turn to those bad debt managers and say, look, you need to buy up more of this bad debt because we're bailing out the system. That will free up the banks, and then give people confidence that the financial system is on solid ground, so they'll go out and spend and buy homes and turn the Chinese economy around. But the problem is, based on what we're seeing in the lending data, it's not what's likely to happen. As China's rare lending slump feeds worry on slower economic growth. And you remember I warned about this yesterday, but now it's starting to be picked up by the media that this is a major issue. Weaker loan demand tends to be a negative sign for future growth. Thus, according to Lin Song, the chief of Greater China economist at ING Bank, he notes that his biggest concern is the entrenched pessimism, which is the main reason for weak consumer and corporate borrowing appetite. Now, I don't agree with him on the first one. We can already see in the charts that when you see commercial industrial lending decline, it's a reaction to the economy. Let's take a look at this next chart as we overlay advanced retail sales. And you can see as demand goes down, well, demand for loans goes right along with it. So it's really the economy that's leading the lending market here. And there's a good reason. As consumer demand drops, well, it starts all the way up at the factory level. Well, you don't need to produce new products, so you don't need to borrow money. And then it slides all the way down the supply chain. And that's what you see in the charts there. But he is right about consumer confidence. Let's take a look at this next chart where we overlay the University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Survey. You can see where confidence goes. Commercial industrial lending follows with a lag, and here's the big red flag right now. You can see a massive drop in confidence as commercial industrial lending pushed up. Remember, we talked about in yesterday's show how this had everything to do with financing, a lot of imports due to front running the tariffs. The risk, based on what we're seeing in this chart, is you have something that looks like the global financial crisis, where you see confidence plunging as commercial industrial lending pushed higher, and the next thing you know, it came screaming down into a massive contraction, again kicking off what was the biggest financial crisis in the world. But based on what we're seeing in China now, the risk is this could be even bigger than the GFC. As deflation in the economy becomes increasingly pervasive, it's souring household and business expectations for future income and profit. Well, what it simply means by that is what happens is when you have deflation, it doesn't mean that business expenses go down. Of course, we know businesses cut expenses everywhere they can, but they can't cut labor costs without laying off. Then, of course, the problem is workers start to realize that if there's deflation, they're not going to get raises, and everyone starts to spend less, thus exacerbating the whole situation. The danger is, without a timely fix to reflate the economy, China may follow the footsteps of Japan and become trapped in decades of deflation and low growth. And that actually is the best case scenario for China. Because if you really think about the situation, if you've got a whole lot of bad debt in your financial system sitting on bank balance sheets, and more of it is going into delinquency, and of course, you know, the more of that happens, then you're going to see more go into default. Then the base case, your ideal case, is you just have decades of economic malaise. Worst case, you've got the financial crisis, one that's going to dwarf the GFC. Let's take a look at this next chart of the Consumer Price Index in blue against corporate profits after tax, because one thing we do know going into every recession is you see consumer prices rising, but they don't get passed on to consumers. You see corporations get squeezed at the margin. They're being forced to absorb that, and next thing you know, what happens? They lay people off, and you go right into recession. And that's the risk we're facing right now. As we know, corporate profits are headed lower. The risk is that inflation could head higher. But the issue is that when we look at China, we see they're not the only ones that are panicking. Because let's turn to the U.S. now. We find out Treasury Secretary Bissett, he's also panicking. Because he's not pushing for Fed cuts, he's just touting models. Now, is he worried about inflation here? Well, that's an issue, but there's a bigger issue that's going on in the U.S. economy. Let's take a look at what hit today as U.S. producer prices now rise by the most in 3 years on services inflation. The producer price index increased 0.9% from a month earlier, the largest advance since the consumer inflation peaked in June of 2022. The PPI rose about 3.3% from a year ago. So what we're starting to see in the data is exactly what everybody's been warning about. This is what Powell's been concerned about, is that we're seeing producer price inflation hold up. Now, the same thing's happening in China, but there's a problem. On the output side, you're seeing just the exact opposite, because manufacturers there are absorbing the price increase because demand's dropping. Services costs increased 1.1% last month. That's the most since March of 2022. And goods prices, excluding food and energy, rose 0.4%. And what this is setting up for is an increase in inflation here. But again, the question is, can consumers afford higher prices? Well, the answer is we know they can't. But this won't stop businesses in the short term from potentially increasing prices. This could put the Fed on hold at the same time. This is a concern we have for the U.S. economy. You see, Bissett is panicking here. I'm going to show you why in a little bit, but it has nothing to do with inflation. And while businesses have assumed the majority of tariff cost increases so far, margins are being increasingly squeezed by higher costs for imported goods. Now, this is from Ben Ayers, the senior economist at Nationwide, and he expects a stronger pass-through of levies into consumer prices in the coming months, with inflation likely to climb modestly over the second half of 2025. What he's suggesting here is, again, we come back to the Fed. This is what Powell's been worried about, that businesses would absorb as much of this as they could, and then they get to their breaking point and say, look, we can't absorb any more. And when you think about a lot of the small business surveys, what was the number one concern? It was taxes. Why? Because they knew if taxes went up, they wouldn't be able to absorb all this tariff increase. Well, now they got that, they're back to trying to absorb as much as they can. But again, there's a point where you start to see your profits turn negative, and then you start to wonder how long you're going to be in business. At that point, you have no choice but to raise prices. And then again, that's the concern coming over the next several months. And this is what we're likely to hear the Fed reference at their next policy meeting as we look at the consumer price index in blue against the producer price index by commodity for final demand. And what do you see? Final demand prices are headed up. CPI has been headed down, and the risks are, and you can see the two move together, that at some point, if producer prices for final demand continue to increase, they're going to be forced onto consumers. And that's the issue we come back to with Treasury Secretary Bissett. It's not about inflation, it's about demand, and he sees demand dropping in a major way. In fact, one very obscure indicator is suggesting demand here in the U.S. is tanking. What declining cardboard box sales are telling us about the U.S. economy? Well, nothing good, that is. U.S. box shipments, that is, volumes of empty packaging material sold to retailers, which in turn use them to ship orders to warehouses, storefronts, and Americans' doorsteps, fell to the lowest second quarter reading since 2015. That is staggering. That is the worst now in 10 years. So what you're seeing here is demand in the U.S. is absolutely plunging. At the same time, producer prices are on the rise. That means businesses are going to be forced to lay people off and scale back production. They're going to have absolutely no choice. We're facing the same issue that China is. They have way too much supply and not enough demand. And now you're seeing that here in the U.S. And because boxes aren't usually ordered that far in advance, they can offer a nearly real-time indicator of buying and manufacturing activity. This from Brett Alfson, professor of economics at Columbia Business School. He says it's evolving along with the demand for consumer packaged goods and their manufacturers. And he is absolutely right here. This is a very leading indicator of what's going on inside the U.S. economy. So we see that they're panicking in China because they know if their property sector continues to decline and we start to see a lot of fire sales on assets, it means banks there are going to go insolvent. There's going to be massive bank runs, and it's going to lead to a collapse of the Chinese financial system and spread all over the world. But the problem here at home is the same issue there, is demand isn't enough to support the U.S. economy. The Senate thinks we need some rate cuts, that's the magic fix. The problem is it's not. What we're facing is a global economy that's headed right into recession. But even if that happens, you can still make money trading it. Let's talk about our meta strategy. This is an advanced trading system that combines 9 professional trading strategies into a single intelligence.
And welcome back here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. So it's not Alligator Alcatraz, it's Deportation Depot. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' administration is preparing to open a second immigration detention facility at a state prison as a federal judge decides the fate of the state's holding center for immigrants there at that isolated airstrip now known as Alligator Alcatraz. Well, our colleague, Fox's Stephanie Buffalmonte, with more details.
From day one, Governor DeSantis has set a clear message, and that is illegal immigration has no place in the state of Florida. Today, the state of Florida, through the collaboration of state and private partners, many of those behind me today, are proud to announce our second illegal immigration detention facility, also known as the Deportation Depot.
The Baker Correctional Institution in North Florida will soon be home to the new Deportation Depot. The facility will be able to house more than 1,300 detainees while the undocumented immigrants wait to be deported. The governor says the National Guard will staff Deportation Depot. DeSantis said the state needs more capacity to hold undocumented immigrants in addition to Alligator Alcatraz.
This will meet a very critical need to have even more space than what we have at Alligator Alcatraz, and I think that's it just shows our guys are really working hard with DHS, and they're getting the job done and protecting people in their communities.
The Immigration Detention Center will cost about $6 million. The governor claims the cost for the facility will be reimbursed through federal partners. State Representative Anna Eskamani weighing in.
This approach is dangerous. This approach hurts our economy, it hurts our communities, and it's a huge cost to the taxpayer. And if we really want to make our communities safer, then a targeted approach that goes after individuals that are dangerous would be a much better investment of our money and of our time.
Eskamani has testified in a lawsuit that aims to shut down Alligator Alcatraz and says she wasn't surprised by this announcement.
I'm expecting that this really is also a backup plan because the judge is going to issue a decision soon on the Everglades that really could.
Approach Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Kilo is type Beechcraft King Air 1 4 miles west of Kilo Charlie Golf Charlie 3,500 feet. Request flight following.
Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Kilo approach. Squawk 5002.
Squawk 5002 Beechcraft Golf Sierra Kilo.
Beechcraft Golf Sierra Kilo radar contact 13 miles west of Kilo Charlie Golf Charlie 3,100 feet. Altimeter 29.902.
Roger Beechcraft Golf Sierra Kilo.
lead to its complete closure, at least temporarily. And the state needed an option to relocate individuals that are currently being housed there.
Governor DeSantis said the facility would be operational soon, but did not give an exact date. Stephanie Buffmonte, Fox 35 News.
Stephanie, thanks so much. So, out live there over Jacksonville, Florida. So this is at the Baker Correctional Institution. It's about 43 miles west of downtown Jacksonville. It's expected to hold 1,300 immigration detention beds, though that capacity could be expanded to 2,000, according to state officials. Florida Governor DeSantis taking questions from reporters after this announcement today. Let's listen.
Landing, and I think it was a viable option, but this is just better ready-made.
Good day. 125 decimal tree Beechcraft Golf Sierra Kilo. Goodbye. Approach Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Kilo 2,500 feet.
Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Kilo approach altimeter 29.902 radar contact. Continue.
The fact that this part of the facility is not being used right now for the state prisoners, it just gives us an ability to go in, stand it up quickly, stand it up cheaply, and then ultimately have something that could be 1,300. It could be more than that. I mean, as Kevin said, we can build out more from there if need be, and we won't hesitate to do it. The reality is although Blanding does have some air access, we were not going to be able to run the big flights out of that airstrip. We were going to have to go to Cecil Field anyways. And so here you got Lake City Airport, 15 minutes down the road. And I think it's very, very convenient. Not as convenient as Alligator Alcatraz, where it's literally just one big facility, but about as close as we can get. So I think that this is going to be value added. There is a demand for this. As I said, I didn't want to set up something and then have like 30 people here. I want to make sure there. I'm confident that it will be filled, and I'm confident that DHS is really stepping up to do the removal operations and to get the flights going.
One of the reasons this facility was originally temporarily closed was because of a staffing shortage with the DOC. So who's going to staff this facility?
Yeah, so I mean that's part of the reason we have General Haas here. We will have National Guard staffing. We'll have whoever, and contractors as need be. But we are not going to use the folks from, Baker County has a jail that they use. We're not going to use those folks, and we're not going to be using folks on our DOC staff either.
Does this facility have air conditioning currently, or is that part of the $6 million sort of upgrade?
Yeah, so again, that's a great question and a classic example of how we meet or exceed the standard. State standard, we do not have to have climate control facilities. Federal standard, we have to maintain a climate. So we will retroactively fit these facilities to meet that federal standard. So we will have external HVAC units piping air into these facilities.
But we are not going to they are not entitled to toasted hoagies. I'm sorry. Like this idiocy that I hear coming out of there with some of these, and then like some of these, liberal representatives that think, oh, are they allowed to go up to the buffet for seconds? I'm like, what? That is what you're complaining about? So yes, all the standards will be met. Some of the stuff that we've seen put out there about, toasted hoagies and this and that, I mean, get real. It's going to be met to standards. And, at Alligator Alcatraz, the staff eats the same meals that the detainees do prior to their deportation.
And Governor, you talk about you guys tackling a lot of
complex task, you guys getting that job done. Do you believe you won't run into any red tape getting this deportation depot up and running?
Well, there's always going to be red tape thrown at us. Now, we will cut through any red tape at the state level 100%. But, you know, we've seen, I mean, you know, they're suing, people are suing on Alligator Alcatraz. They are going to try to find something to be able to throw sand in the gear. So that's inevitable that happens. That happens every time, you know, we do. You know, I hear some of these politicians like, well, you know, I don't know if we could do that. We may get sued. Like, I don't want to get, I get sued every time I wake up in the morning. They're suing us for something. And look, sometimes they'll find a liberal judge and then we win on appeal. But I absolutely expect that there's going to be folks who just object to the mission who are going to try to file lawsuits.
Governor, what is the most recent update we have with Alligator Alcatraz where the capacity stands right now?
So the capacity is, you know, what do we probably have, over 1,000 right now? Or?
Yes, sir. We have a capacity for 2,000 right now. We have right at 1,000 inmates.
And that's because they are removing people out of there. And that's good to see. Like I said, you know, my goal is not like they were taking, Biden was using FEMA funds to put people up in hotels in Manhattan. And they're basically just sitting there. And then like in Massachusetts, they were doing
3 miles at 6,200 feet Airbus A20N. Report them in sight.
Beechcraft Golf Sierra Kilo have the Airbus A20N in sight.
Approach Allegiant 988 Heavy is passing 6,000 feet, climbing 14,000 feet. Allegiant 988 Heavy, approach altimeter 29.902 radar contact, continue to GS power. Allegiant 988 Heavy, traffic is 2 o'clock 2 miles at 2,500 feet Beechcraft King Air. Report them in sight. Allegiant 988 Heavy have the traffic. Beechcraft Golf Sierra Kilo traffic alert. 9 o'clock, less than 1 mile, 5,300 feet Airbus A20N. Report them in sight. Allegiant 988 Heavy, you are 25 miles north. Climb and maintain 14,000 feet. Expect ILS runway 36 approach via Papa India Echo transition. Cleared to Papa India Echo. Climb and maintain 14,000 feet. Expect ILS runway 36 approach via Papa India Echo transition. Cleared to Papa India Echo Allegiant 988 Heavy. Beechcraft Golf Sierra Kilo, contact approach on 134.25. Good day.
134.25 Beechcraft Golf Sierra Kilo. Goodbye. Approach Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Kilo 2,500 feet.
Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Kilo, approach altimeter 29.902 radar contact, continue.
Approach Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Kilo. Request clearance to transition Bravo airspace.
Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Kilo approach. Cleared through the Bravo airspace.
Cleared through Bravo airspace Beechcraft Golf Sierra Kilo. Tampa Tower Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Kilo is 10 miles north 2,500 feet with India to land.
Southwest tree 778 heavy contact ground on 121.35. Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Kilo Tampa Tower. Altimeter 29.92 wind calm, fly straight in runway 19 right.
Fly straight in runway 19 right Beechcraft Golf Sierra Kilo.
.35 Southwest tree 778 heavy. Goodbye. United 1834 heavy turn next taxiway. Beechcraft Golf Sierra Kilo, follow the aircraft on the runway. Wind calm, caution, the Airbus A20N landing runway 19 left. Cleared to land runway 19 right. United 1834 heavy turn next taxiway. United 1834 heavy contact ground on 121.7. Going to 121.7 United 1834 heavy. Beechcraft Golf Sierra Kilo, acknowledge last transmission.
Cleared to land runway 19 right Beechcraft Golf Sierra Kilo. Beechcraft Golf Sierra Kilo, exit runway when able. Beechcraft Golf Sierra Kilo, contact ground on 121.7. 121.7 Beechcraft Golf Sierra Kilo. Goodbye. Tampa ground Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Kilo request taxi to parking.
Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Kilo taxi to general aviation parking using taxiway Victor uniform.
Taxiing to general aviation parking via taxiway Victor uniform Beechcraft Golf Sierra Kilo.
Doing the same thing. And then when the Army-Navy game was up there a couple years ago, the veterans couldn't get a hotel room because they had illegal aliens in there. That is not, we're not here to just kind of create like room and board. This is a part of intake, processing, and remove. There's a process that goes along with this. There is red tape, there is bureaucracy that the feds have to comply with. And so they need the space to be able to do it. So that's what it is. But I think you've seen it pick up in Alligator Alcatraz. So there'll be people there, and then there's also people moving at the same time. So the total census is a moving target, but that's really to be expected. And then we have enough space. If there's a delay, then obviously that census will rise. And then if they're doing more than one flight in a day, then that census goes down. So there's just a give and take on that. We're working with them to see if there's any way that we can be helpful to expand the removals from Alligator Alcatraz, and we'll do it from here too. We have not done any flights ourselves, right? I mean, it's all the federal government that's doing it. I think we would be able to help them with some of the flights internationally, if that's what they would need to be done. So I know they got an influx of cash. I know they're doing a lot of different stuff. But we have now, with this, we're going to have really strong capacity. And this is not like these two institutions are the only things. I mean, there are people that end up in like a jail, and they're charged with crimes or things like that who may be illegal, and they go through a process accordingly.
Do you know, like, obviously there's the federal court order right now halting new construction at Alligator Alcatraz. I mean, how much did that order factor into the need to stand this one up soon?
It did, because we have what we want at Alligator Alcatraz. We probably could do some more. But we were looking at a demand signal that is strong, and we did need this. And so that we were always planning on doing it. I just wanted to be sure that the demand was there. The demand is there. You know, we've continued to operate Alligator Alcatraz for that. Now, we do know, I mean, it's obvious that this judge is hostile. It's not, this is a political thing. We get that. But we also know that we're right on the law. And if we don't win with the trial judge, you know, we'll ultimately win going forward. I do think we'll get an adverse ruling stayed. I do think operations are going to continue. So I'm not worried about it. It's unfortunate we got to kind of deal with some of this stuff, but it just is what it is. I mean, you know, you're doing you're doing stuff, and this has kind of been a cause celeb for folks who want to protest the Trump administration, and so they want to do this. Although I will tell you, you know, the people protesting Alligator Alcatraz, you know, is kind of as ridiculous as it was, because I mean, some of the people going there are some really, really problematic people. The most ridiculous was the thing where they hit me on carrying out the executions because some of these serial killers were veterans. And I'm just thinking, you have a lieutenant governor, it's a Green Beret, governor's a veteran, and they're the veteran friendly, and yet the governor is signing death warrants for, yeah, when you rape and murder young children, you're liable for that punishment. And if a jury of your peers, if you're convicted and awarded that punishment by a jury of your peers, it's my solemn responsibility to carry it out. The notion that somehow veterans would not want to see strong justice for serial killers. Some guy, one of the guys murdered his wife and kids in cold blood. Give me a break. Is that the best they can do to talk about this as some type of anti-veteran thing? No. It's anti-serial killer. It's anti-child murderer. It's anti-rape and murder. That's what we're doing, and we're upholding the law when we do it. So I just thought that was almost unbelievable that they would try to do it. Look, anytime you do anything, people take shots. Fine, that goes with the territory. But like sometimes it's like you may want to like pause and check that before you press send and embarrass yourself. So if that's what they're trying to do, that being pro-veteran to these people on the left mean running interference for child rapists and serial killers, I can speak for the lieutenant governor. Count him out and count me out. That is not what we signed up for. We signed up to protect the public. We signed up to stand up for victims. We signed up to make sure that our communities are safe. And so this is part of that process. And I just thought it was ridiculous.
A little off topic.
Tampa Ground Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Kilo, could you please send a ground power unit?
Beechcraft Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Kilo, a ground power unit is on the road.